And we're back here on Community Focus. Glad you could be with us today. And we got with us John Coulter here. John has been involved in been involved in television, been involved in several things, but the last few years been in producing movies. And that's something that some of you may have seen some of his productions and some may not. And that's what our goal is to highlight a little bit what you do. And maybe we'll inform people how they can go about seeing some of these things. John, appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Kenny. I'm glad to be here. Thank you all for having me here. And you know, I'm not exactly sure what I do sometimes. So,
well, I think that's most movie producers are that way. I mean, it's either feast or famine sometimes.
Yeah, I think so. You know, it's been a long journey, this whole process doing all this, and I'm still learning. But it's an adventure, and it's something that I've enjoyed and loved doing since I was really little. And it's every day's different, and that's what I enjoy about it.
Well, the thing about movies too is everybody they think about movies, they'll think about some star production that is going to be a blockbuster. But there's a whole lot more movies out there than that. I mean, there's a lot of movies come out every single day on a variety of subjects. And tell us a bit about the ones you've done.
Well, what we've done is, of course, I'm a big fan of history, and it seems like, you know, history wasn't one of my favorite subjects in school growing up, but it seems like it's become where I keep doing something historical. And I love the past, and I think that we can learn from the past to make a better future, and I think that is what interests me there. You know, I got started back in high school. I made a feature in high school called The Harvest. It was set in the Great Depression, and I was just really interested in photography and whatnot. And I remember in my photography class in high school, the teacher had these excellent photography books, and I would just look through them, all these black and white images from the Depression era. And I really sympathized with that because you saw a lot of farm-based, rural farm-based photography. And of course, I come from a small farm. And that intrigued me, and that's very important in my life, the farm life. And so I make a little experimental project set in the 1930s, and that went over real well. We had a showing at Bloomfield Baptist Church, and the place was filled, and there was a standing ovation and all that, and popcorn in church. And after that, I said, okay, I think maybe I should pursue this, and my family kind of agreed, and we went to and I went off to Orlando, Florida, and got a degree in film, and then came back and worked at Wave TV for a little bit in Bardstown, then here in Bardstown, or Wave TV in Louisville, then in Bardstown at PLG, and did some historical-based stuff there. St. Joseph College, Triumph of Faith, St. Joe Prep, and Enduring Legacy. So we did films on that institute, which is pretty fascinating. And then just really wanted to get out and pursue my own thing. And so that's what I did, and started my own production company called Tunnel Mill Pictures, and went straight into work on another feature, ironically set in the 1930s again, called The Old Winter. That took us about 5 years of work. And we got that finished finally, had a really big premiere in Louisville at Kentucky Center for the Arts. It was very successful, and now we're pushing that film out into the film festival market, and now we're working on another one. This time I'm going back a little further in history into the Civil War.
Oh, before we get into that, you talk about the film festivals, and I know Sundance is going on about right now. Is that something is that something you participate in? Is there other festivals like that, or is that just
Sundance is the big famous one.
That's the granddaddy.
You're right, and a lot of people think that, but there's hundreds out there that are just as prominent and that filmmakers want to get into. Sundance has changed over the years. I feel like it used to be when it first came around, it was a great place for the highly independent filmmaker to send a film. But now they're putting out films with major stars in them, and it seems like you almost have to have a Hollywood level star to get accepted into Sundance Film Festival. Okay. So Sundance has sort of changed.
Sundance is when Hollywood.
Right. And of course I think that upset a lot of filmmakers out there, and they've which has created other guys to go out and create new types of film festivals that you don't have to have that. So Sundance isn't the only way. Okay. But it is a good option if you can get in there. You just most likely are going to have Brad Pitt or somebody.
I understand. Well, Going through the process. I mean, there's more to making a movie than just getting a camera, putting it in front of somebody, and saying action.
Right.
I mean, somebody's got to write a script.
Right.
You got to casting. I mean, that's got to be a very tough job. Is
Yes.
finding. I mean, you just can't just. I mean, go to the drama class out the high school and say
Right.
I'm going to get a lead actor. How do you
Right.
find people to do that, and how do you get a script put together?
Well, since I've been doing this, I have seen filmmaking, especially in Kentucky, really grow, and the interest in not only in filmmakers but actors. Back in high school, when I made that movie, we had to get just our friends.
Right.
You couldn't at that point. It didn't seem like anybody in Kentucky was making films, or it was just unheard of. But since technology has become more affordable, you're starting to see a lot more filmmakers, which means you're starting to see a lot more actors come out, people that are interested in doing this type thing. And so the process is that growth has helped me in my casting. But yes, I mean, you start out, I mean, you find the subject that interests you, and then you write a script. And
So you do a lot of your own script writing?
I write my scripts.
Do you?
And I think the reason I do that right now is because I'm in that period in my life where I'm really trying to hone in on my own style as a filmmaker. And so what better way to do that than write your own material too, so I can be the most familiar and knowledgeable with it. But the writing process alone is a huge job, and it's the quiet job that people don't really give much credit to. It takes a lot of research and time, and it's really hard to just sit down in front of a blank sheet of paper or a laptop and just be staring at a blank screen and write that.
Yeah.
Because you kind of want to get lazy and say, let's just go to see a movie or a bookstore or shop or something like that out to dinner. So you have to. So it's a commitment and
A lot of discipline.
A lot of discipline to make yourself sit down there and write and get into that story. And that's step number one. Once you get that script becomes sort of your Bible for the rest of the project. And then you start. Now, I happen to write with certain actors in mind. Over the years, I've gotten to know some locals, and I've had actors contact me and whatnot. And so sometimes I'll write with a specific person in mind. Other times I won't. But once the script is there, we go out and we start doing the casting thing. And there's a lot of actors, primarily, that come out of Louisville. There's some actually here in Bardstown, people that are interested in doing it. And some from out of state. We've had people come from all over the country, from California and different states like that. Actors want work, and just like filmmakers want to make films, and so they'll find films that they think are good for their careers, and they'll do. And some will do it, are willing to do things without pay, just to get the experience or something on the resume, or a demo reel. And so it's it becomes a team effort at that point. And then there's the whole funding process and trying to get, because I work in so far I work in period films, and that makes things a lot more difficult, from costumes and props and things like that. So funding has turned into something crucial in my work. And that can be a fast process, that can be a slow process, because it's hard to get somebody in funding interested or as passionate about the material as you are, the person that created it.
They want to see a return.
Right, and they want to see a return most often.
Right.
Which is fine, but so there's so many different angles that go into it, and I don't think people really realize the work that does go into it, the time.
A lot of people really don't know what a producer does. I mean, a producer basically is the overall. I mean, you may do some of your own directing, but I mean, obviously the producer has a director that actually on the day-to-day, and they don't deal on a day-to-day basis with the actors, but they it's sort of generic. Everything they see, everything goes on.
That's exactly right. But in independent filmmaking, in Hollywood levels, that's there's a person wearing for every job.
Right.
Independent filmmaking, you kind of have to wear multiple hats as yourself. And so, I never really. The good thing for me is I think I'm interested in every single aspect of filmmaking, whether it's writing or directing or producing or cinematography or editing or whatnot. But there's filmmakers out there that only want to direct. I'm sorry if that messed the sound up.
No, you're fine.
that makes it the hard part is because you do have to wear so many hats, and sometimes I just want to sit down the producing hat and just focus on the
Right.
the creative aspect of it, because producing is business, and I didn't necessarily go to school for business,
Yeah.
but I'm always willing to learn, and have actually enjoyed that producing.
Well, when you
process.
go to the Kentucky Center of the Arts and you see your finished piece there, I mean, it's got to be a high there that you can't describe.
It was phenomenal to see that happen, and that experience with The Old Winter, the 1930s film that we just finished. We didn't, I thought maybe there may be 200 people there. We went in there were 800 people, probably 500, which had shown up an hour in advance. And that also sold out over a month in advance, just 3 days after we announced the tickets. So there was a lot of expectation to see that film, which surprised me. I didn't know.
Is it because of the subject matter, or is it because of you?
Well, I don't look at it as because of me at all. In fact, I'm probably the least. I like to be behind the camera for a reason. I don't have to get out there in the public eye. I like for the work to speak for itself. Yeah. I think it absolutely was the subject matter, which early on with The Old Winter, I worried that people wouldn't be as interested in that. It was a very personal piece for me about the vanishing of rural farms, and which is something that's intrigues me very much. And also disappoints me to see how there are fewer and fewer farms as we go about in that lifestyle, because I believe that was a very sound lifestyle and way of life, and living with morale and everything, and we're losing that, and we're becoming a rushed society. And I think sometimes we need to slow down, and that's kind of what The Old Winter touches on a little bit. And so I just didn't think there would be much interest in that. And so when we walk in Kentucky Center for the Arts and see that response, we kind of thought, I think we have something here. And even on the Facebook page for the film, the likes have just, today the likes on something is a big deal, and there's almost 7,000 people that like that and have liked that movie so far. So that's sort of a shock to us, and we haven't even really marketed it or anything.
Right.
So
now, if somebody wanted to see that film, I mean, how do they go about seeing it?
Well, we're working again on the film festival thing right now, and that's the big thing. Is so many people that weren't able to come to the premiere have really been asking me to do another showing or something like that. But film festivals have such strict rules with these things, and if they would have a problem if I probably walked in here and showed it to just you.
Right.
They want, if it's going to be potentially bought, they don't want anyone seeing it.
I understand. So you're in the marketing stage at this point.
So we're in the marketing stage with it, the business stage again with it, and it's a whole new process. It's one process to get a film made.
Yeah.
Then when you get it made, it's a whole new world when you try to push it out into the world. But the point of the film festival is to try to find a distributor, and then hopefully they would take it and put it on mass DVD sales, and then that's how people can see it. But that can be a slow process, and people just it just takes a lot of patience.
Well, while you're in the marketing stage for that film, I mean, obviously you're already in the preparation stage for another one. What you got coming up now?
We're working on a Civil War piece called The Private, and about 12 years ago, of course, me, like so many other people, have had an interest in the Civil War. It's a fascinating time period, and I've always had an interest there. Some 12 years ago, I wanted to make a Civil War movie, but I didn't want to make something that had already been done. And so I said, the only way I can do this is to find something unique that somebody hasn't done. And I said, out of all the hundreds of thousands of men that fought in that war, there had to be a woman in there somewhere. I'm just confident that there would be.
I'm pretty sure you probably found one or two.
that probably dressed up and went in there and fought. Yeah. And I did a little research, and at the time, I actually didn't find much on that. There was one book, but I only needed one source, and I found out that if there was one confirmation that it happened, that was plenty for me, and that gave me the confidence and said, okay, there's the unique story. Yeah. And I thought it would just be a fascinating story to talk about a woman fighting as a male soldier in the war, and to follow her journey and to see what that was like for her. And so I started this about 12 years ago, but I wasn't quite ready
Yeah.
from a production standpoint because of the difficulty of getting this stuff made. And after the old winter, and after how we've seen that that's been received, it was like, okay, this is time to do that. And so I've written the script, and we've done the casting. And right now we're in the early pre-production phases and doing some fundraising and trying to build our reenactors, to bring them in, get costumes together and all that kind of stuff. We've done some test shooting, and I expect that to take place from anywhere starting within a couple weeks from now all the way up until the fall is probably the time frame on that.
Okay, now you do this out on a particular site. I mean, you'll have like a studio.
A variety of sites. Well, you know how in Hollywood they have sound stages and studios and things like that. Well, Bloomfield is sort of my sound stage. I mean, that's where I grew up, and you'd be surprised how many different types of movies that can be made here. And whether in Bardstown or Bloomfield or we're in Nelson County in general. So primarily we'll be shooting around Bardstown, Bloomfield, but in different places in the state like Perryville Battlefield and Mill Springs Battlefield and just some other locations.
Well, right now there's some struggling young teenager or somebody out there thinking about they want to get into the film business, whether it's an actor or a producer or director. What kind of advice would you give somebody if they're thinking academically, experience-wise? What's your advice to somebody that's wanting to get into this particular business?
That is probably one of the toughest questions for me to answer without being extremely blunt and honest. It is a tough business. Yeah. The arts are just a tough business in general, and making a living at that. I think so many people are aware of that, which is why it's often difficult to get funding and things like that. Number one, to someone aspiring to be in this, you have to absolutely be passionate about it. Number two, you have to be a self-critic. If you're not good or your talents are weak in a certain department, you have to either be willing to hand it over to somebody or step aside. Because this industry is so highly competitive, and especially like I was saying earlier, how the advent of new technology and affordable technology, there's so many more people getting into it. So people that don't really, there's an assumption out there with certain filmmakers that the camera will make the movie for me just because it shoots at 2K or 4K. I can just point it and it'll just produce this epic movie. Filmmaking is not the camera, it's the structure that goes into the writing and the preparation and all that, and the style of the director and whatnot. So you have to absolutely be passionate about it. You have to get into it for the art of the craft rather than the technology. That's number one. And then number two, or three, I don't know how many I've said now, you have to grow a very thick skin because again, it's such a competitive industry, like the music industry is competitive. And there's so many people out there trying to get into it. I don't think that I would ever come out of college and just give up absolute everything just to become a full-time filmmaker, because there's just too many elements that you have to entertain to make sure that it gets to one key word, and that is quality. And so many filmmakers don't put emphasis on quality. And that's what is key. And to make something quality, sooner or later, it's going to cost something. It's going to you're going to need to get actors that are very experienced and professional and stuff like that. And then there's just so many things you have to take into consideration. So I think anybody getting into it should take it slowly and might want to go on and get some other kind of line of work going on and slowly test yourself in it until you know the process and that you're ready to dive into it. And then once you know that, or you just fully immerse yourself into it, or you just maybe find a different other. Do
you have any particular mentor or anybody that sort of led you along the way, or is this something you sort of self-taught yourself?
I think I have probably become my own mentor in a lot of ways, because again, growing up, I mean, and I don't mean that in a bragging way. Yeah. Growing up, I'm in the middle of a small field on a small farm in Bloomfield, Kentucky. I mean, Hollywood filmmaking was about as far away to the moon to what people did, and you were almost considered odd for going out and making movies when I first started out. So I sort of developed this quiet trust in myself, and really that's how it's been. Now along the way, sure, I have there's influences, whether they're famous directors or independent directors or even authors and things like that help inspire my work and whatnot. I did have a photography teacher in high school that was extremely motivational to me and really encouraging to you. One thing that filmmakers I think sometimes don't get enough of is encouragement, because in this business and really with anything in life, if you have talent, sooner or later that can become an Achilles heel, because people strive so much to have that, and so many people do, but so few people actually pursue it and take that sacrifice to do it. And so the guys that do take the sacrifice, you kind of often get the cold shoulder, and which is unfortunate, because just doing this stuff on its own is so extremely difficult and stressful at times, that artists need encouragement, actually. So when you have somebody that comes along that encourages you and say, you're doing good work or whatnot,
you go so many years with nothing produced that you just almost it's got to be a little depressing at times.
It is. I mean, there's certainly it certainly that element is there, and I think it's there with all types of artists. And I've often said that filmmaking and maybe any art form is one of the loneliest processes that there is, because you have to do so much of it quietly and within yourself, and so you have to be a very strong willed person and confident, and you have to know what your strengths and your weaknesses are and things like that. You learn a lot about yourself. So, but I think that's how I would want it. I don't think I would want to be doing it from somebody else's point of view. I want to be doing it for myself, because at the end of the day, it's your art and it's your work, and you should be happy with it.
Well, John, we do appreciate you coming in here. We wish you all the best, because it sounds like you've done some tremendous work already and still got a lot more to go, and still more to come out of that mind up there.
Thank you.
All right. Well,
I appreciate it.
Thank you all for tuning in to Community Focus. We've got John Coulter here with us, film producer, and still got a lot more to come from John. I think you're going to hear that name quite often every now and then when you start looking in the movie business. So, John, congratulations, and keep it up, and you keep it up as well. We'll try to do our best to keep you informed and educated here on Central Kentucky TV Channel 6. Stick around, more to come on Community Focus. I'm Kenny Fogle. Have a good day, everyone.